Hello, friends. It's been a while. Our last episode was about 6 weeks ago, and I've been taking a break. First of all, for this episode, I want to apologize to my friends who I've canceled on, rescheduled, canceled on for their interviews. Uh, this summer or the end of the school year has just been wild. Every weekend's different with different events, concerts, and end of the year activities. My son graduated from college. My daughter's graduating this weekend in just a couple days. Um, had planned to take this summer off or do one interview a month, and so that going to ramp up again in the fall. But one thing I've realized in this break is that it's harder to do something occasionally, like once a month or once every other month, than it is to do consistently, like weekly. Even though it's a lot of work and um it's so at least for me, I found it's easier to do something consistently, even if you're busy. Um, and so it was just getting harder and harder to hop on, hit record, and do the podcast. And so I had some time this morning. half This has never happened. Half of my counseling clients canceled or rescheduled this week. So all of a sudden there are some time and some space. Um, and lately, besides doing the weekly podcast, I've gotten back in the gym and kind of prioritized self-care and exercise. So I thought of doing this episode on different ways that jujitsu can help you in your relationships and in life. Just some lessons learned from studying Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I did an interview with my coach previously. I'll link to that so you can hear that interview. I started Jiu-Jitsu, I think in 2001 at an MMA gym, and lots of ups and downs and lots of gaps in the training. So this is year 2021 of training, and it's a lot of fun. I hope to be able to train martial arts and for the rest of my life. And fortunately, jujitsu is one of those arts that you can do when you're in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, and still have a lot of fun. Even if you can't really keep up with the young guys, you can still have a lot of fun. So here's a few principles. I could talk about jujitsu for hours, but I won't do that. Just a few basics, a few things. Even if you are not interested in jujitsu or martial arts, I think it'll help with your relationships. So starting, jujitsu is the gentle art, and so one of the key principles or defining characteristics of jujitsu is the idea that you can use technique and experience and skill to overcome aggression, and protect yourself and keep yourself safe. And so how does that apply in relationships? One of those, the principle is to not try to meet strength with strength, but to redirect aggression and the attack of your enemy. And so if someone is coming at you straight on, instead of meeting force with force, is to turn and deflect it, redirect it, get out of the way. And in the Bible, it says that a gentle answer turns away wrath. And so I found that I do lots of couples counseling. I found that um, that very often our ego or our nervous systems react and respond to aggression, to and with either attacking back or blaming back, or a wall comes up and our defenses come up, and when we feel like we're getting attacked, or we can shut down and withdraw. And so a gentle answer turns away wrath, and becoming skilled at listening and healthy communication can help with that. And then the second thing about jiu-jitsu, it's the gentle art. I believe I've studied other martial arts, Filipino martial arts, Kempo karate, that jiu-jitsu is, I think, the most empathetic art, or has the potential to be that, because it involves connection. So jiu-jitsu, if you're not familiar with it, it's a form of martial art that is grappling. So instead of punching and kicking and striking, with your fists, elbows, knees, and feet, jiu-jitsu involves grappling and manipulation. So it's like wrestling. And so one of the key things about training jiu-jitsu is that you're in constant close contact with your partner. Now, if you struggle with anxiety, the idea of getting this close, it's like hugging someone for like 60 minutes aggressively. If you struggle with anxiety, that might seem a little stressful. But that's one of the great things about jiu-jitsu, is that you learn, especially if you have good coaches and they train you well as a beginner, is that it's okay to be in contact with someone. It's okay to be close. You don't have to be scared. You as you learn the techniques, you learn how to be safe, even though you're in contact, you're in connection with people. And so I meet with a lot of people where it's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to open up. It's hard to feel safe. They might start out relationships great, and have a lot of fun. But when it comes time to go deeper below the surface, you can get anxious, and you can avoid that. You can run away from that. Or you can keep people at arm's distance, and that's good to if your goal is safety. But it's hard to do life when you keep people, if you're disconnected, and you either push people away, keep them at arm's length, or you don't let them in and let them get to know you, get to see you. One thing about jiu-jitsu is that it's not theoretical. A little, or a lot of my karate training was like, practicing techniques in the air, against no resistance or little resistance. With jiu-jitsu, you really find out what works, and because you're wrestling, we call it rolling. It's more playful. So it's not a fight, but it is an encounter. It is wrestling with each other, to try to win the match, or to do the techniques. And Brene Brown, I've mentioned her a few times on this podcast. She calls the experience of being real, being vulnerable, and wrestling with conflict and communication. She calls that rumbling. And so gentle art, empathy. Third principle is just the idea of balancing grace and truth. And so what does that look like in jiu-jitsu? Well, in jiu-jitsu, there's a time to push and there's a time to pull. So, we're always talking about pushing and pulling, pulling on the gi, pushing with your legs, pushing with your knees, framing away, pushing away at the right time, pulling them in and sweeping people. And so, well, how do you know when to push, when to pull? Well, that comes with experience. And one of the principles or questions to ask is, do I push or pull with my spouse? Do I push or pull with my son, my daughter? Do they need do they need a push? Do they need some correction? Do they need some encouragement? Or do I just pull them in to a hug and not say anything? Do I just sit with them? One of the questions to ask is, well, is it working? Because that's another thing I love about jiu-jitsu, is that it's just extremely creative, and you have to be really resilient and kind of flow with the situation as it happens, and constantly be evaluating, is it working? Now, in jiu-jitsu, like if you overuse strength, you can hurt your partners, and that's no fun, because things can get injured or break, and then you don't have someone to play with. So in our gym, we're like a family. We're all friends. We're careful with each other. We care about each other. So in relationship, you can't overuse strength, because you might get what you want, but if you hurt your family, if you hurt your kids, if you hurt your spouse, then you may think you won that argument or got what you want in that situation, but in the long run, you lose, because you're hurting the people that you love. So that's overusing strength. If you underuse strength in jiu-jitsu, you get smashed, you don't get better, and your partner doesn't get better either, because you're not giving them realistic resistance. And you can kind of, they can live kind of in a fantasy land about how they're applying the technique, and they might not be doing it correctly. So giving feedback, giving people notes is helpful. And so, I didn't mention this earlier. The gentle art and empathy. Part of rumbling is you don't have to hurt someone or get angry in order to have a conversation. And the like in jiu-jitsu, a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, when it got kind of introduced to America, Royce Gracie, in the first few UFCs, he would win some fights without having to throw a punch, or he would have people coming at him super aggressively, and he would just take them down and get the position called mount, or take their back and then get them to submit. And so, balancing grace and truth. When do you correct someone? When do you give boundaries or consequences, or correction or consequences? Oh, I'm sorry. Too much strength, not enough strength. Being gracious and not being brave enough to tell the truth, to be honest or confront, that can be a problem too, right? Because as Henry Cloud says, you don't only get what you teach or create in situations, like work culture or family, or in relationships. You'd only get what you create. You get what you allow. You get what you permit. And so if someone is doing something that doesn't work for you, that you dislike, but you don't say anything, you don't tell the truth, you don't push back, then it makes sense for them to assume that, like, you're fine with that. And so you get what you permit, you get what you allow. And a lot of times we do that because we're afraid of conflict. We're afraid of rejection or a break in the relationship. But if that stuff is happening, you have a break in the relationship. You're actually hiding and being dishonest or less than honest. And you lose intimacy, you lose connection. Your true thoughts and true feelings are not being known. And so, one of the things about jujitsu that's awesome, and really any sport, I just happen to love jujitsu, is that you develop the confidence to be more open and vulnerable in the safety of a supportive relationship. And I didn't write this down, but I'll add this here. One fun thing about jiu-jitsu is it's an individual sport where you have to develop and grow and kind of stand on your own individual, but it's also a team sport in that your team develops you, grows you, makes you better, supports you, helps you learn. And if you compete, you do individual matches, but your individual score goes to the team score. So you contribute to the success of the team. And even if you don't compete, just showing up at the gym, being available to train, being a good training partner, you contribute. And that's the same thing in marriage. That's the same thing in families, that your individual strengths and personality and you like the way you do things and your perspective contributes to the family, and builds it up. And hopefully you find a place that supports that and honors that and listens to your input. Okay, so push pull, balancing grace and truth. Fourth principle, balance. More on balance. More. So in jiu-jitsu, when we're standing up, a strong stance, bending your a strong athletic stance, makes you sets you up for success because it makes you more responsive to what's going on, to the needs of the moment. So if you have too strong of a stance, too wide of a stance, it's easy to take you down, even though you might seem strong, because it's easier to compromise your balance. You're not able to stabilize yourself when things change. So if you have a really wide stance and you're nice and low, you might be hard to push back or pull forward, but it's easy for you to get tipped left or right if you're too low, too strong. So it's in relationships that's just being really stubborn, and being really stuck in a stance and not being able to listen well or get input. Now, I'm there are things that you should have strong stances in, and I guess that's a stance or an opinion. And your core values, the strength of your convictions, absolutely stay strong on that. I'm not saying be postmodern and not believe in truth. And that is a worldview choice of mine, that there is actually truth, and objective truth. But so overly strong, again, too much strength, too much of a being too stubborn and rigid. It doesn't allow you to respond to what's actually in front of you and what's actually going on. So too strong of a stance, and then too shallow of a stance also makes you easy to move around and easy to get thrown on your head and taken down. So not too strong, not too shallow, just right, and that helps you be resilient and go with the flow, and helps you win. And it's not all or nothing. I would say, like in training your kids and guiding and directing your kids, it's helpful for them to, there is safety and security in saying, like, this is what our family is about. This is like non-negotiable. These are the rules. This is the house rule. And this is where there's freedom. This is where there's flexibility. This is where, we'll run with your ideas and what you would like. And so that's just the collaboration. That's just the back and forth of relationship. And again, jujitsu helps with that. It's fun when you have that balance, when you're able to respond with strength or weakness. Straight hard lines, or circular movement and flow, and being able to be flexible is part of the beauty of jiu-jitsu. Okay, so another principle. I think I added another one, so this will be number 6. I'll review. So gentleness, gentle art, empathy, connection. I didn't say this earlier. When people visit the gym, or whenever you roll with someone that you haven't rolled with before, wrestled with, within 2 seconds, 10 seconds, you will be able to pretty quickly know how capable someone is, because you feel them, and that connection, that's in the physical sense. So you can feel if they're super strong, if their grip is strong, if their legs or their back is strong. You really can quickly know what they're about. Relationships are a little different, right? It can be hard to get to know someone's character, like true character, and that sometimes that can take years. And so empathy, curiosity, listening well, opening up, self-disclosure, telling each other's stories. That's one way of increasing empathy and connection, increasing intimacy and attachment with people, and that takes time. And becoming a black belt in jiu-jitsu takes a lot of time. For most people, it takes 10 years, 8 to 10 years at least. I've been training jiu-jitsu on and off for 21 years, and I'm still a purple belt. Getting good at relationships can take a lot of time, but once you know the principles, it feels your learning curve can go really fast, and it gets a lot of fun, or it gets better when it's fun and not frustrating. Life and jiu-jitsu are the same way. So one thing that helps make jiu-jitsu more fun is not getting smashed and crushed. And so the 6th principle is developing frames. So in jiu-jitsu, part of the sport is your opponent trying to dominate position and get on top, and smash you, crush you with their weight. And one of the beautiful things about jiu-jitsu as a self-defense art is that you could be 80 pounds, 100 pounds lighter than someone and not get absolutely destroyed if you learn how to defend yourself with the proper positioning of your limbs and making frames. So instead of using muscle or just muscle strength, learning how to position your forearms, your elbows, your knees, your legs in a position that allows you to not get crushed. So the bones of your body are supporting your opponent's weight. Boy, that was long. I'm kind of a nerd about jiu-jitsu. But so how does that apply to life, having frames? So, or I'll say more about the technique. So if someone's on top of you trying to smash you, you can position your arms under their neck, on their shoulders, on their hips, so that instead of their chest being right on your chest and your poor little lungs getting crushed by someone who's 80 pounds heavier than you, if you have your frames in place, you can breathe, you can relax, um, and you're okay. Um, and you can escape. You can use those to escape and transition back from defense to offense. So life, how does that help life? Um, some frames in life are healthy organization, and schedule. And so having life is overwhelming, busyness, responsibilities, pressure, relationships, your expectations, other people's expectations, other people's demands on your time and asks and requests. It's a lot, right? And the different roles that you have: mom, dad, work, school, volunteer, ministry, um, gym, all the fun things that you want to do, going out with your friends. You know, it's hard to have some breathing room sometimes. So, structure, frames. Well, so you're getting smashed, you're getting overwhelmed. You wiggle in your hand so that that someone's shoulder isn't crushing your face and twisting your neck and spine. You wiggle your hands, just get that, your hand on their bicep, a little space so that you can breathe. So, a healthy morning routine allows you to have some space, turning off the phone, not checking social media and email and your calendar and the news in the morning, having some space, having some breathing room, uh, developing healthy habits, some non-negotiables, so that you don't have to waste mental and emotional energy every day deciding whether or not you're going to like exercise or read the Bible or whatever habit you choose. So habits are decisions that you've made beforehand so that you do them regardless of your energy, your motivation for that day. It's just something that you do. It's just automatic. Someone's crushing me, smashing me. I'm automatically trying to get an underhook to lift them up so that I don't get crushed. And so you develop that with practice, and it helps to learn like what's high percentage for success. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Part of jiu-jitsu is learning what works from your coaches. And these days there's thousands of videos of world champions being successful. So what works when someone is like doing a certain thing? And same thing with life. Yes, you develop your own style and your own unique things that work for you, but there's lots of general fundamental principles of life and relationships that successful people have used, that would be helpful to study and learn and implement in your life. Part of that's a good morning routine, starting out the day well. If you start out the day well and like starting out a match well, grappling round, and getting your grips, the ones that you like. So usually if you start well, you'll be successful and end well, or at least it makes things easier. So developing some healthy habits in the morning of mental, emotional, spiritual space, physical care of your body to energize you and get yourself ready for the day. That's a frame. Organization, and now and there's a spectrum. Like some people, they love their clutter, but I spend so much time as a health coach. We're talking about exercise and weight loss. Then we end up talking and stress management, and we talk about so much about clutter and disorganization and mess. And so for a lot of people, the way their space looks is a reflection of what's going on inside them. Their bed, their laundry, their junk mail, their papers and files. And for some people, it's the other way. Their environment gets to the point where that is actually the problem that's affecting their mood and their stress and their anxiety. And so it goes both ways. Deal with your stress and mood, and then you have the motivation and energy to organize and work on things. But sometimes you can't wait until you feel like it in order to do the right thing, right? Like you can't wait until you feel comfortable to get out from someone um, sticking their knee in your solar plexus and pulling up on your arms and neck and smashing the air out of you, right? I'm not going to wait until like, oh, I feel like I feel great, and so I can push on their knee and escape. No, you know, deal with the pain points in your life immediately and quickly, and it goes easier. Otherwise, you know, prevention, if you can do it, but then if you know, bad stuff happens and you can't prevent everything. But when you start to feel uncomfortable, get off track, things are going well, there's a rupture in your relationship, there's a problem, and you're building resentment or bitterness, like nip it in the bud, deal with it quickly before it really takes hold and you're really, really in trouble and deep water. And if you've missed that opportunity to deal with it early, well, it's never too late to deal with it. So even if it's going to be hard, and you know, another thing I love about jiu-jitsu and MMA fights is a comeback. You know, when things seem dark and bleak and you're on the brink of defeat and you're like there's no way you're getting out of it, and then you get out of it or someone gets out of it. I was like, yes, I love that. And I love seeing that in people's lives, whether it's marriage or you know, relationships with kids or work, or you know, different situations. Is so sometimes it just takes a little breathing room for things to calm down, settle down, to get some perspective. That's the other thing. So when you're getting smashed, when you're getting, you know, kind of beat up with life and things like that, you're just scrambling and flailing around, and what you do doesn't work. You know, your arms and legs are just, you know, and having some frames, putting both feet in the floor to get safe, so you have some breathing room, and then you have time to think. So you'd have time to breathe, then you have time to get perspective, and then figure out what's the next best thing. So that's the next principle: frames, priorities. So there's a hierarchy of different positions in jiu-jitsu that are advantageous for you. So different types of guard. So if you're on your back and you're wrestling, there's different positions and grips that are helpful for you. Getting on top of someone and being outside of their legs, side to side, like on top of them, is really a good, tactical advantage for the person on top. Getting both legs over is the mount position. Getting behind someone and their back and controlling them from the back is a position. So the one of the principles of jiu-jitsu is wrestling for these positions before trying to go for a submission hold. Is safer and a higher percentage. Like you can do wacky things and be out of position and like and then catch somebody in a submission hold and win the match, but those are low percentage moves. So it's high risk and high reward, but it's high risk. It's there's usually smarter, more consistently successful things to do. And so focusing on positioning yourself. And so this is related to like the gentle art, not meeting strength with strength, is the principle of controlling what you can control. So spending more energy, one way to prioritize things in relationships is controlling what you can control. And so there's so much to say about that. But one thing is expending your energy on the things that you're responsible for. And with your spouse, with your kids, caring for what you is under your responsibility. So doing what you need to do and not expending more energy caring about stuff than the other person does. And why? Because that empowers them to take responsibility and care about what they're responsible for. So, well, in jiu-jitsu, coaching and helping people, it's letting them wrestle and struggle with a technique or in a grappling match, and then letting them seeing them be successful. So giving them good resistance so that they grow and they get the fun and joy and satisfaction of success, knowing that it was well earned, that they really did get that armbar on you or pass your guard and get to that position that they want. So that I realize it's a little convoluted. Priorities. So learn deciding what is most important for you, right? Like your goals, your values, like your mission, what you want life to be, what you want life to look like and feel like, what you want your relationships to look and feel like. Frames and positioning help you take time to assess, where am I? Where am I in life? Where am I in this relationship? What does this relationship need? And as a marriage counselor, and as a husband and a father, talking is always helpful. To assess, where are you, and kind of getting feedback from other people. Where am I? Because where am I going? That helps you figure out, so then what's my next best move? So like if you're on the bottom of mount and someone's on top of you, you don't magically go from there to like a triangle choke or an armbar. There's steps that you have to take to get to that. And so, like with career, like, oh, I want to, have this job, or I want this position, or, I want to be an Instagram influencer or something, whatever goal you have, you don't magically get from where you are to that without lots of hard work. And so what are the steps that I need to take to get there? I hope you've enjoyed this episode on a few things that jiu-jitsu can help you with life and relationships. I wrote a book about 4 years ago, about jiu-jitsu and martial arts and how it can affect your family and parenting. And it's still on a hard drive. It's still dormant. But hopefully someday, so this is a reminder to me, like if I want to get that book, what are the steps that need to happen? So my question for you as we end today, where do you need to connect? How are you doing with empathy and connection in your life? Do you feel isolated? Do you feel disconnected? Not only from others, do you feel disconnected from yourself? Like your true self or your hopes or your dreams? And are you exerting too much strength and control in your relationships? How are people experiencing you and your the energy that you give to relationships? Are you aggressive or are you appropriately assertive? Or are you hiding and holding back and not confident, not showing up strong and your true self in different situations? How are you doing with balancing grace and truth? Yeah, could you be more open and honest, or bold, with truth? Could you be more patient, gentle, gracious, understanding with your friends and family? Or could you even be more compassionate online, responding to different things? Balance. Do you know your stances on stuff? How are you doing with balance with all the things that you're juggling in life? What are your frames? What's the structure? What are the things that help you breathe and get perspective? One thing I'm excited this summer, our church is doing a midweek huddle. It's a midweek gathering. So my daughter's been going to youth group, but this is for like adults, is to get together, see what that's about. But that'll be a time to pause and breathe and assess. How are you doing with priorities? Your priorities. Where are you? And what's the next best move? All right, guys. Hope you have a great summer. I hope to do some an episode on kind of guiding and coaching your kids what to do with the summer and how to spend the time with them. My daughter, we're hoping she gets a summer job before she goes off to college. But welcome your comments or questions as parents. I don't think I've done a parenting episode except with Sarah, bad Christian mom, Sarah. But with parenting, if you have any ideas or questions, if you are a mom or dad who wants to talk about parenting in your family, welcome, reach out and we'll have a conversation about what you've learned and what you'd like to share with our audience. All right, guys, take care. Until next time.